According to Hugh Jackman, there's just one thing Disney has to do in order to convince him to reprise the role of Wolverine in the MCU, and that's invent a time machine. Yes, much to my dismay, Jackman has confirmed that he's finished with the role, yet I can't imagine Wolverine won't be one of the many mutants incorporated into the MCU. If you're having trouble picturing anyone else in this iconic role, let me help you out with some suggestions about what it could look like. There are some stars who manage to master a role so much it's hard to picture anyone ever taking their place. And unfortunately for the MCU, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is definitely one of those situations. But if it helps, Jackman's own son apparently doesn't get what all the fuss is about. He said, "Listen, my dad is nothing like Wolverine. He's not tough or cool." Frankly, I disagree, finding Hugh Jackman very tough and cool, but that's beside the point. Just because he was Wolverine at one point, okay, several points in his career, doesn't mean Disney can't cast someone amazing who can bring new life to the character. Don't forget, there was a time when the idea of anyone else besides Tobey Maguire playing Peter Parker sounded crazy, but then everybody panicked at the very idea of Tom Holland's Peter Parker leaving the MCU. And no, I didn't forget about Andrew Garfield, who also gave us an admirable version of Spider-Man. I could sit around talking about Spider-Man all day, but I'll leave that to my close personal friend J. Jonah Jameson. My point is, just because Hugh Jackman did a great job with the character doesn't mean we can't come to know and love another actor's portrayal of Wolverine. And of course, I have my fair share of suggestions about who that could be. Okay, maybe more than my fair share, but it's my video. You can leave your suggestions in the comment section. First option is my dream, the impossible dream choice: Henry Cavill. He is an amazing actor, and as we saw in his portrayal of Geralt of Rivia in The Witcher, he can definitely pull off a brooding hero with no shortage of body hair, baby. But since he's already in the DCEU as Superman, I'm guessing that's a non-starter. There's Charlie Hunnam, who's known for his role as Jax Teller in Sons of Anarchy, or Star Wars Oscar Isaac, who might be a less obvious but still awesome choice for the role of Wolverine. Some fans would also love to see Jon Bernthal go from being the Punisher too, especially since his time as this comic book character was cut rather unceremoniously short. There are tons of great options out there, and making the right pick is essential to helping fans accept someone other than Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Even though Wolverine can be a little bit rough around the edges, we all know he's a brave, if sometimes reluctant hero. Or at least that's how we've seen him portrayed in the Fox films. But why not bring him into the MCU as an outright villain? That might sound crazy, but I'm not suggesting it simply to be contrary. Wolverine was actually introduced onto the pages of Marvel Comics as a villain, and he's been a legitimate bad guy on several occasions. And I'm talking supervillain evil here, not just a morally ambiguous superhero who plays fast and loose with the rules like we've seen him on the big screen. In fact, there's one great storyline Disney should definitely consider incorporating into their version of the character, and that is Wolverine Enemy of the State, written by Mark Miller and illustrated by John Romita Jr. In this story, Wolverine is, well, he's not a friend of the state, let's put it that way. He's lured by Japan by a ninja clan known as the Hand, and once he's there, things don't go exactly well for him. A little bit of good old-fashioned magic combined with some Hydra brainwashing turns Wolverine into an excellent agent. For the villains, of course. Basically, Wolverine then goes on a rampage, attacking beloved heroes like the Fantastic Four and Daredevil, which is definitely at least the second worst thing to happen to the Fantastic Four. Showing Wolverine as a villain would be a huge departure from how he's usually portrayed, and would give Marvel a chance to show off just how insanely strong he can be by putting him up against some already established heroes. It could also have an impact on how mutants are viewed in the MCU, since they don't traditionally have the easiest time getting along with non-superpowered humans. I'm not here to hate on the version of Hulk we met in Avengers Endgame. In fact, bravo to Bruce Banner and the Hulk for working out their differences with some long talks and a ridiculous amount of gamma radiation. I'm just wondering how long this is really gonna last. Bruce has made many attempts to calm the Hulk down over the years, and spoiler alert, they usually don't last long, if at all. At his full strength and rage, the Hulk is a nearly unstoppable hero who I would love to see going all out against Wolverine. It would even be appropriate considering the fact that Wolverine actually made his comic debut in The Incredible Hulk number 181, and as I'm sure you can imagine, these two hot-headed characters weren't exactly playing nice. Thanks to a complicated situation with the movie rights to the character, the Hulk can't have his own standalone film right now, and with Wolverine in the mix, he wouldn't have to. If you're a fan of superhero movies, and I'm assuming you are since you're watching this, I'm sure I don't need to explain to you why seeing these two characters face off on the big screen would be incredible. But don't take my word for it. On the rare occasion Mark Ruffalo isn't dropping major spoilers about the MCU, he does have some solid ideas about how to improve this fictional universe. But I may be a little bit biased since he also wants to see the Hulk and Wolverine go head-to-head. It's going to be hard to one-up Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, but seeing him fight the Hulk just might do it. Ruffalo is in favor of the face-off, so hopefully Disney gets on board with the dream matchup. There are lots of amazing heroes in the MCU, but how great can a hero really be without a rival to fight? Now we've seen some awesome villains in the MCU and some less than compelling ones. Would the first Thor movie have been so enjoyable or the Dark World been remotely watchable without the relationship between Thor and Loki? And Black Panther was a fantastic film thanks in no small part to the animosity between T'Challa and Killmonger. Sure, there are lots of villains who are just trying to earn some quick cash, but the most compelling ones tend to be those who have personal issues with the heroes they're fighting against. In other words, Wolverine needs a real rival to fight against in the MCU. Yes, we have seen Sabretooth on the big screen before, but he hardly stood out as much as he could have. Same with Lady Deathstrike and the Silver Samurai. I would love to see Wolverine stare down a foe he has a long and complicated history with, which is something we've seen many times in the comic books. Take Sabretooth for example. His mutant powers manifesting cost his brother his life, and let's just say the rest of his backstory isn't any happier. At one point, Sabretooth had Wolverine lobotomized, so it's safe to say there isn't a lot of love lost between them. In the comics, Wolverine had a little brother named Dog. Hey, I didn't name the unfortunate kid. He was so much like Sabretooth that it caused a lot of confusion among comic book fans who were waiting for the big reveal that they were the same person, only for it to never happen. This is the backstory that Fox went with, where the two characters were brothers, but the MCU doesn't have to follow that same path. They could establish Sabretooth as a character with a serious grudge against Wolverine without making them family. Deadpool. Do I even need to go on? How long have we been waiting to see Wolverine and Deadpool together trading quips and trading blows and really doing anything other than what we saw in X-Men Origins Wolverine? I know Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are best friends behind the scenes, but maybe this will give Reynolds a chance to make a new bestie and have a prank war with. You'd think these two would get along great since they have so much in common. Sad backstories, memory loss of loved ones, and phenomenal healing abilities. But Deadpool just, well, there's a reason they call him the Mark with the mouth, and he isn't exactly everybody's cup of tea. We all know Deadpool's first big screen foray was an unmitigated disaster that Ryan Reynolds is still making jokes about to this day. So why not get it right this time? Disney has the movie rights and budget necessary to make this happen, and there's no shortage of fans who want to see it. Plus, if we're dreaming about Wolverine in the MCU, we might as well dream big. The first three phases of the MCU were all about the Avengers, setting up the team, watching the team work together, watching the team split apart, and then regroup to take down the Mad Titan Thanos. And don't get me wrong, it was an amazing journey, but I think there's a bit of a cautionary tale in there regarding Captain Marvel. Since her standalone film was released just before the highly anticipated Avengers Endgame, Marvel kinda hedged their bets about how popular Carol Danvers would be, so she just kinda showed up and was invited to take part in the team. This didn't sit well with a lot of fans, and even those who love Captain Marvel wish her association with the Avengers had felt a little more organic and less abrupt. This is even more important when it comes to Wolverine, since he's such a loner by nature. He usually has to be convinced, if not outright mentally manipulated, to join up with the X-Men, so the idea of him showing up and enlisting in the Avengers right away, it isn't great. I have a feeling he's not going to be as easily convinced to sign up as some other characters have been. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to see Wolverine going solo all the time, but making us wait for the ultimate hero team-up is definitely the way to go, and it would make the moment all the more satisfying when it finally does take place. I don't want Wolverine to show up and be automatic besties with the Avengers, nor do I want his entry into the MCU to be overly abrupt. Wolverine is just one guy, but his existence means there are mutants in the MCU, and while that is exciting, it's also somewhat of a problem. The issue here is that Marvel will have to explain why we haven't seen mutants up until this point. By showing clues here and there that mutants in general and Wolverine specifically exist, it'll be easier to accept that they've just been really good at remaining on the down low until now. Going into the Black Widow movie, there have been rumors that the Taskmaster will show off some skills he supposedly gained from a confrontation with Wolverine. This villain can mimic other heroes' powers perfectly, and the idea of him fighting Wolverine could definitely get fans more excited about seeing this hero in the MCU. There are also some rumors the Alpha Flight team will be making an appearance, and this group of Canadian superheroes have a place in Wolverine's origin story. Marvel hasn't shied away from including lesser-known characters in the past, and just look at the success of the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. Having Alpha Flight join the MCU would give us more great characters and could possibly set the stage for Wolverine's introduction. They say cats have 9 lives, and while I'm not sure what number Wolverine is up to at this point, it's gotta be way more than 9. He's lived so many different lives, with each one being sadder and more traumatic than the last. And there's a particular character from his past we haven't seen on the big screen yet that I think would be a perfect addition to the MCU. In the comics, just after World War II, Wolverine met a woman named Itsu, and they promptly fell in love, got married, and eventually prepared to have a child together. It was pretty idyllic, until the Winter Soldier showed up and destroyed his happy family. The whole Captain America Civil War debacle surely won't be the only time we see Bucky's past come back to haunt him, and this part of Wolverine's backstory could connect him to an existing MCU character. Anyway, unbeknownst to Wolverine, his son survived the attack, possibly thanks to his own mutant healing ability. His father had named him Akihiro, but most folks called him Daken, an alias he later made his own. Daken and his biological father didn't exactly get off on the right foot, and that is a conflict I would love to see in the MCU. Even though Wolverine's had plenty of screen time, there are huge pieces of his background just waiting to be explored. Listen, we all know Wolverine is great. He's been at the forefront of tons of movies and is one of the most well-known mutants around. But what if I told you that there are other mutants out there? I'm not saying we need to get rid of Wolverine by any means, but it wouldn't hurt to let some of the others shine every once in a while. Even his good friends like Rogue and Jubilee could use a lot more screen time than they've had so far. And there are just so many mutants to choose from besides Wolverine. Of course, we have the heavy-hitting popular characters like Psylocke, Kitty Pryde, and Gambit, just to name a few. Plus, who doesn't want to see Storm swoop into the MCU and potentially end up as the Queen of Wakanda as the result of her romance with the Black Panther? But there are also tons of less well-known mutants who could make great members of the MCU if given a chance. Pixie may not have the most impressive mutant power, but hey, there are plenty of heroes with no supernatural abilities whatsoever. And then there's characters like the alien mutant Warlock, Dazzler, who hasn't had anywhere near enough screen time, and Dr. Cecilia Reyes. X-Men don't always need to have the toughest abilities or adamantium skeletons to be entertaining, and hopefully that's something Marvel takes into account when introducing Wolverine. Whoever replaces Hugh Jackman doesn't necessarily have to be a solo star when they have the potential of an amazing team backing them up. So far, I've tried to keep my requests for the MCU's Wolverine realistic. For example, I haven't even mentioned the fact that I would love to see Jack Black as Wolverine, like in this pic by Twitter user @JimmerUK. And it's really Twitter user Stephen Blomkamp's fault for putting the concept out there in the universe anyway. But what I'm about to suggest next might be even crazier than Jack Black as Wolverine. What if he doesn't fall head over heels in unrequited love with Jean Grey? I know it's a part of his storyline straight out of the comics, and maybe I've just been burnt by their super quick, fairly unexplained connection in the existing films. But did you know that Wolverine has dated other people? Earlier, I talked about his wife, and he's had plenty of other interesting and deep connections with other characters including Mystique, Mariko Yashida, and the Silver Fox. There are a lot of options for a romantic storyline that we haven't seen before on the big screen. And if we're going to see Wolverine in love, I want it to be convincing. But of course, we all know that romance is entirely optional and not always advisable for superheroes. Or non-superheroes, come to think of it. If Wolverine isn't going to have believable feelings for a well-rounded, compelling character, then it would be best to leave that subplot out entirely. As we've seen in films like Captain Marvel and Thor Ragnarok, romance isn't an essential part of an entertaining film. And sometimes it's even a distraction from an otherwise excellent movie, like when Steve Rogers kissed Peggy Carter's niece, who is also his niece because of time travel? Hopefully, the MCU version of the character will focus on some of his other attributes and storylines instead of just rehashing his connection to Jean Grey yet again. So, who's your dream casting choice for Wolverine? We want to hear your ideas for how this character should be introduced into the MCU. After leaving us a comment, make sure to stay connected to us here at CBR by clicking on that subscribe button and turning on your notifications for more new videos.